Hi Charlie, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So I've got some questions to ask you about your academy experience. So the first question I have to ask you is, how do you feel you've transitioned from the 1010 Academy to your client work?
Yeah, so it was a little while ago now, but I remember it was at the beginning, it felt like a bit of a daunting experience moving sort of away from the academy into client stuff. But I found after sort of the first week or so, sort of fairly well settled into my client. Um, there's there were some guys from 1010 already on the site. They were super helpful, sort of getting me started and getting me running with everything there. The academy definitely had some good sort of base knowledge stuff for getting you started with all the different testing and stuff, because you don't know exactly what you're going to go into until you're sort of signed to that client. And I think that's part of what I found a little bit daunting, was I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing. But yeah, it's sort of it's one of those things, you just got to take it in your stride, and the client knows what they're getting from you in the academy, so they're willing to help sort of get you started. But yeah, definitely the great team that I started with was a big plus.
So were you kind of new to tech, or do you study tech or anything like that before?
Yeah, so I was new to tech, so the academy was the first sort of start I had. I did a little bit of a Python course leading up to it, but not anything massive, because I did a psychology with forensics degree beforehand, so it had a little bit of stats in it, but nothing sort of tech based. Yeah, so it was definitely a bit of a change of career path.
Fabulous. So my next question for you is, if you can take us through your placement. So what client teams have you worked with, and what specific projects have you been responsible for during that?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with two clients in the about 18 months now. So the first one was in the financial sector, and it was insurance. So that was my first placement, and it was a hybrid role. So I moved down near to the where the company was based, and did a couple of days in the office a week. So when I first started there were two or three guys from 1010 also there, in my sort of immediate team, and we were doing data testing. So it was an agile agile sort of setup. So we'd have stand-ups and stuff like that. But our main work was the data testing, and then a little bit of sort of manual testing here and there. We started in the first few weeks and did sort of a lot of getting up to speed with the project, and then sort of moved on to bits of data creation and learning the sort of end-to-end process of what we were doing. Then we were doing a lot of SQL stuff in writing queries and amending queries to sort of get data, and then go through this data testing. We used a whole bunch of different tools and stuff for that, but that sort of progressed, and then as work sort of rounded out with that SQL and the data testing stuff, we sort of flexed onto some of the workflows, did some manual testing and little bits of smoke testing here and there. And that went on for sort of about 12 months, my first placement. And then had a couple of weeks on the bench, and then moved over to my second client that I'm with now. So their main sort of thing I was doing with them was working on that e-commerce site. So they're a retailer. And so sort of them was a lot more manual testing based. So started with scripting and sort of writing up this bank of tests, and then we moved on to the execution, which we're in now. It's been a lot of working with stakeholders and like business users in this one, probably more so than at my last client site. So that's been quite good, and it's sort of bringing up those sort of interpersonal skills and stuff like that. Yeah, but that's pretty much what we've been doing there. We started doing standalone sort of testing here, but it's sort of expanded into that end-to-end testing for all their like back-end sites. Is sort of taking it through their website, doing all that part to it as well, and sort of doing the whole process.
Amazing, thank you. So what parts of the 1010 Academy training have been most useful? Because I know you'll be learning extra things whilst you're on the job, which is always good. But what are some key things you've really taken with you from your training, which you still use now?
Yeah, so definitely the whole base of the different styles of testing have been useful, just for when I've been on sort of client site and I've gone in knowing it's state testing or it's manual testing, but like other sort of testing bits normally crop up. So we've done smoke testing and stuff like that, and just having that sort of flat base of knowledge sort of across the board is really useful for knowing different terms, or at least being like, I vaguely remember that from the academy, and being able to go away and sort of check out what it is, so you can turn up the next day and be like, I know what's going on. Sort of like that broad knowledge is great. Because I've used a lot of the different testing types. Going through the agile methodologies as well was super helpful, because knowing sort of what's expected of you at a stand up, or sort of that communication of like the once a day, 15 minutes, or the once a week, whatever the sort of client wants. But yeah, also the soft skills and like the other parts that sort of go into the BA, for they haven't helped me so much in a sort of technical fashion, but like just talking to business users, things like that, helping to clarify, you know, different criteria and objectives, it's been super useful.
So do you find it helpful as well that, like you said before, you've got people from 1010 as well that were already there at your client before? Do you find that really beneficial because they've been there a bit longer, but they've still had the same training as you, so they're a bit more kind of used to how things work at that specific client?
Yeah, definitely. And all the people I've sort of, when I've started, all the 1010 guys I've been with have been super helpful at sort of bringing me up to speed, or if I've got questions, just having them, you know, jumping on a call with them 5 minutes to go through stuff. And it's been, yeah, super helpful having someone there, because it feels like you're going into it with already sort of a platform there.
Yeah, that's great. It's like you still have that support still with you, don't you? So what is a normal working day or week for you?
Yeah, so at the minute, so I'm fully remote at the minute, so it's working from home, which is nice. And then my morning will normally start with a sort of small catch up with sort of what we did yesterday in like a stand up fashion with my immediate team. So we'll go over what we did yesterday, any key blockers for the day, and sort of what the plan for today is. At the moment, we're doing a lot of test execution. So we've done most of the scripting, and we're just going through executing tests over quite a few different work streams. There's been a few sort of blockers at the minute and things like that, so that's why we're jumping between work streams, which is quite nice. Sort of like gives you a bit of variety. We're doing the back end systems at the minute, so it's a lot of sort of reports and things like that from the 365 Business Central, which is the thing that we're working on at the minute. But yeah, that's the sort of the main bulk of the day. We'll have a couple of meetings a week that are like department meetings, things like that, that will be sort of those large scale meetings to go over the things that are blocking testing as a whole, how the projects go in, sort of like the targets and things like that. But for us at the minute who are from 1010, the project's sort of slowing up because we finish in a couple of weeks and we'll be going on to a new placement. So we're sort of getting ready to do handover documents and things like that as well. There's always like the occasional small tasks to pick up in the day as well. Sort of like you might have script amendments for previously scripted stuff that might have changed or isn't quite right. If there's like data creation that needs to be done, things like that you just sort of do ad hoc as you're going along. But yeah, that's sort of a roughly a day.
So how do you feel you manage your time? Because like you said, you get some odd tasks throughout the day. Do you think you struggle with time, or do you think you're quite good with blocking your time out and kind of having that routine?
It works fairly well. We have like those set meetings and stuff, so you know what time you have to work with. Sometimes you have more calls thrown in, which sort of jams up a little bit. But I found my client manager is really good with sort of what is the priority. So if I know I'm not going to have time for everything, it's very easy to sort of work down the list and get as far through as I can. Yeah, the prioritization is the big thing, and sometimes you need that sort of influence from the client to know what they want to sort of bring the right thing to the top of the list.
So how do you feel your responsibilities or roles have changed throughout your client placement?
I'd say with both my clients, I'd say the role has definitely sort of expanded. I'm still sort of testing it at its core, and I'm doing a little bit of sort of BA work, working with stakeholders and things like that. But when I started, like, so for my current client I mentioned earlier, I've gone from sort of doing the standalone tests to working end to end. So it's sort of a more holistic process. I'm also sort of jumping between work streams and things like that. But I think that sort of is built up over time when you sort of work with the client and sort of develop your abilities and get used to their systems and sort of gain that trust with them, with like your ability to sort of do your work. They'll start giving you more, and as you start understanding more, you can do more. So it's definitely sort of, the role definitely has expanded, and with that sort of, but by habit comes the responsibilities as well, because it's just sort of you're taking on more and things like that. With my previous client, when it got sort of a bit more into it, about 6 months in, there was a period where the Scrum Master wasn't about, and I took up and sort of delivered some stand-ups and sort of drove those. So that was definitely something that I think is a slightly higher level of responsibility, and stuff like that. It sort of comes naturally as well, and client are just happy to, in my experience, are happy to go at sort of your pace with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely good. You're still learning on the job because you've got your basic knowledge that you can take with you wherever you go. And then, you use different softwares and interfaces with different clients. So learning lots of different things is always really helpful. But what technology, tools, frameworks, and processes have you gained experience with since starting your client work?
Yeah, so a fairly broad spectrum, to be fair, and especially between my two different clients, they've used quite different tools. So even from their sort of like their ticket management and things like that, it was Azure DevOps and raising tickets and everything, and that for my first client. And now we're using Jira, which is quite nice because I know different clients, different sort of technologies like that. So it's nice to have a bit of a broader understanding for future things. Currently, we're also in our test management system is a tool called Tusker, which I think is a bit less well known and not used as often. Which has been good. It's definitely been different. It's just for sort of focusing and making those banks of tests, and then stuff that I haven't done loads of work on, but like little tools that pop up now and then, stuff like Browser Stack, and things like Power BI and Azure Synapse and a bunch of different little Azure sort of things, which sort of crop up. I might do a little bit of work on and then jump back off. Visual Studio Code as well. Done a little bit of that between projects because I did a automation project as sort of jumping back into the academy a little bit. So did some VS Code and did some more C# and stuff. That was good as a sort of a break point. But yeah, a fairly wide range of projects, tools and things like that, and a lot of SQL and the SQL Server Management Studio that I did fairly extensively at my last client. And there's sort of a lot of other little bits to use here and there, but I'd say they're probably the main sort of batch.
Yeah, I think that's really good as well, because you can also do extra courses that Ten10 can supply, can't you, as well, and all the textbook stuff that they can give you. So if you ever want to, if there's something that particularly interests you or something you might use a lot with in your client work, you can do courses in it or do a bit of extra on it, which is really good. So my next question for you is, how has your client supported your development? So this could be in training sessions, one-to-ones, stand-up meetings, individual projects, or shadowing, like we said before, people that were from Ten10 that also work there, maybe shadowing them and seeing what they've been getting up to.
Yeah, so I'd say both of my clients have been super helpful with sort of supporting me from the get-go, really, and continuously sort of throughout my placement there. There's always sort of opportunity for sessions for things I'm not too sure on, or just sort of overviews of when I was getting started of the project and of sort of the business as a whole. I found that they like you to know that sort of surrounding knowledge a lot of the time, because it will help you later down the line. Beyond that, like calls and chats are fairly frequently used for like questions and things they're happy to answer. And with my previous client as well, I had access to a Pluralsight account, which was something where I could do courses and things like that. So that was super useful, and it didn't have to just be things that were like directly involved with what I was doing currently. So I could do obviously I could do things that were directly related to the testing to sort of skill up in that, but also things that I was just sort of interested in around that. So I thought that was super nice. But yeah, the calls and everything that they're happy to have are definitely the main point of sort of help for that development.
Oh, that's really good to hear. It's nice knowing, our clients are looking after the grads, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I get it's it's a learning environment when you're at Ten10, and then when you go on, it's kind of scary because it's a bit more external and newer. And a lot of people, it's usually their first job because they've usually graduated and then gone into this. So it's nice knowing that you're all being taken care of still. So what support have you received from Ten10 during your placement?
Yeah, so a bunch of things, to be fair, from Ten10. So the COP groups, things like that. The chat channels there are super useful for asking questions, and there's a bunch of different ones for sort of different areas of testing or whatever sort of questions you have. The sessions that they have too on different topics, super useful for sort of skilling up, and you can ask questions in those as well about those topics, which are good. Every couple of weeks I have sort of meetings with my Ten10 managers. They're good as well for having sort of like any sort of issues I'm having with the client, or it's sort of like how's it going sort of conversations, which is a nice opportunity to raise any issues that you might otherwise maybe not raise if you just didn't have those calls. Day to day, I think the most sort of helpful influence from Ten10 definitely comes from the people that I'm working with from Ten10 on client site, and sort of my buddies in the mentor program, so the mentees. So they've been super helpful. One of them at the minute is also working on the client site I'm with, and they're always happy to sort of jump on calls and answer questions and stuff like that. So that's been a super helpful resource for sort of both questions to do with Ten10 and things like that, alongside sort of client work.
I think something that's also really helpful is lunch and learns that you guys do, because you're given the opportunity. I mean, I don't know if you've done one, but I've sat in a few of them before, and I think they're just really great that you're given the opportunity to, if you want to help the newer cohorts, or even just help the people around you, or even just kind of expand your knowledge and tell people your knowledge of something. I think that's a really good opportunity to get your voice out there as well, and take maybe what you've learned from a client as well as Ten10 and give that to the people that are still training. I think that's a really good opportunity you guys have as well.
Yeah, it's a great way to sort of pass on that knowledge that you've got, so it makes it a little bit easier for like the sort of next people in line. I'm signing up to do I've signed up to do a lunch and learn as well, so should be doing that at some point, so that should be good. But yeah,
amazing.
A great way to pass on the knowledge.
Definitely. So my last question for you today is, have you been given any extra opportunities through your client work? So this could be travel, industry events, client meetings, or any sort of community charity work.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, there was sort of the plural site access and stuff like that. So sort of the opportunity to do those extra courses and stuff that they were sort of happy to fund and get you through to do for client work and things like that. There's great opportunity for like a bunch of like social stuff as well, which has always been good. Client site and Ten10 both put on great socials and things like that, which are great for sort of even just going, meeting people and networking a bit and sort of making those connections. Both the client sites I've been on as well, there's always some sort of charity event going on in the background, and it might be a bake sale in the office or a walk or a run or something like that, and they're super happy for you to get involved with those as well, obviously. But yeah, just a fair variety of stuff, I'd say.
That's really good. You got some amazing answers to me there. Thank you so much for speaking to me today, Charlie.
That's all right.